Hello, plenty of people here. I will start in just a minute to see if anybody else wants to arrive. These will always start at about 7:15, just so you know, because I have another lesson until 7. So it will always be just after that. Mhm. Right, I'll begin talking. But the purpose of these, for those of you who are new, I think all of you technically will be new to this because you wouldn't have done this last year. So we didn't do it for your Key Stage 3 last year. So all of you are probably new to this. Some of you will have met me before. If I've taught you directly, some of you won't. But the purpose of these, I will always be here every single Wednesday at this time for about 45 minutes or so, with the intention being that you can ask any questions on the homework that you will have received for most of you on the weekend that you will have received. Um, that's probably what I will do to begin with, as in if you have any questions from the homework, which is why if you have a lesson on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'd recommend trying to have a go at it by today, so that if there are any questions from it, then you can ask directly. And I will just, as you can see, I've actually got it up on screen, the homeworks. So depending on whether you're in year 7, 8, or 9, or for later, I'm doing 10 and 11, then I have the homeworks open up here. And I will just go through any questions that you feel like you need help with. If you have any questions about anything you did at the weekend, then you can ask as well. There is a Q&A thing option somewhere on Zoom. I don't know exactly where. I think there's a chat, but that might not work. But there's also somewhere where it should say Q&A. If you open that up, you will be able to ask a question, and then I will see it. And if you want to say, I didn't understand question 3, for example, then you are welcome to do that, as long as you tell me what year you're in, because then I need to know which booklet it is. Um, so just to be clear, if anybody is here from year 10 or year 11, this first sort of 45 minutes or so until 8 o'clock is meant to be for year 7, 8, 9, with the second part being for year 10 and year 11, which I know is different to what we did last year. But that's because I didn't have any Key Stage 3 students in this last year. So that's what we're doing. So just so you know, that is the situation. If you are in year 10/year 11, then join at 8 o'clock. 8 till 9 is when I will do that bit of it. Also, for everybody that is here, you also, apart from this Wednesday thing, you also, if you wanted to do some more English, there is an English lesson every, I don't know whether it's Monday or Tuesday yet, but I will confirm that in the next day or so. And if you're in Key Stage 3, year 7, 8, 9, then again, this time, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. is the time that you want to join because it's a bit more the easier stuff. And if the GCSEs, then 8 till 9 is when you're doing that. Right. Nobody's asked any specific questions yet. So does that mean that nobody has any homework related questions? I'm going to assume not. But again, going forward, this would be the time to ask. I'm trying to encourage people to ask more questions. You just need to type it in. Nobody will see it. Only I will see the question that you ask. Um, so if you are stuck on something or there's something you didn't understand from cells, which is what everybody did at the weekend, then now would be the time to just type it in a box. If you find the Q&A section, if it's not working for anybody, then tell me. But nobody's asked me anything yet. So if anybody could just type something in the questions box to make sure it's working, that would be helpful. Even if it's just a hi. Oh, there's a hi. Yeah, there you go. That's fine. That'll do. Right. Okay. Assuming nobody has any, yeah, that's enough. That's fine. Thank you. Assuming nobody has any specific questions from the homework. The homework, to be fair, probably wasn't terribly challenging, but assuming you don't have any specific questions from the homework, I'm a bit confused. Question 2. Um, you're in. Oh, there's more questions coming now. Yeah. How do I type? You just typed. That's how you type. Um, that is how you type. Question 2. Are you just when you ask a question number, just say what year as well? I assume you are in year 9 on the. I'm fairly confident. Yes, there you go. Fine. Question 2. This is what I'm going to do. So the homework booklet that those students in year 9 did or given on the weekend was this one. Is what it will look like. Look, magically appeared in front of you. And if you are confused on question 2, then that is the one that I will do, and that is a confusing question because that is a very complicated question. Question number 2. Well, it's a good question because it covers basically everything that anybody might need on this topic. So that's what I will do first. And that actually covers quite a lot of. Yes, I'm not sure on the question, but I meant to figure out if it's a plant or an animal. So I'm not sure on the question. If you could tell me which question number you're referring to, I'm not sure. I'm meant to figure out if it's a plant or an animal cell. If you tell me the question number, then I can open that question number specifically up um, for you. So if you tell me that next, once I do this, while I do this question, then fine. Right. Let's talk about question number two on this one. This might have been in other booklets as well. Um, I'm doing it in order of questions asked. So the first person to ask me a question was in year nine. I have got them all open so I can switch back and forth between them. Sometimes there will be an overlap in these booklets, by the way. So the same question might appear more than once. So I will just do it in the order that anybody asks me. So if you could tell me a question, then I will get to it after this one. That's it. I've just got them all open. It's not a problem. So, diffusion is an important process in animals and plants. The movement of many substances into and out of cells occurs by diffusion. Describe why diffusion is important to animals and plants. Okay, this is quite a hard question to answer having just done the topic of cells, only because it links to lots of later topics. Um, so it's quite a hard question to actually give you straight away. But I will talk about how you might go ahead answering the question like this one. So firstly, you don't need to say this, but just as a reminder of what diffusion is, it is the movement of particles. So movement of particles from a high to a low concentration. If anybody has just joined, um, the first part of this will always be answering any questions you have on the homework, because that's the primary point of this. If there is then other time, then we can do something else. But I just want to make sure that anybody who has any questions on the homework will answer it. So again, ask the question in that Q&A thing, and then I will get through them in order. Right. So that's what diffusion is. Now, diffusion, we have to talk about animals and plants. Let's focus on animals. So, um, what animals do, I'll write a proper answer in a second, but animals do this thing called respiration. Respiration is where they take in glucose and oxygen, or we eat glucose and we breathe in oxygen, and we turn it into carbon dioxide and water. And the process helps to release energy. Next time you guys do biology, you will talk about this topic. Okay. But diffusion is what makes all of this stuff work. Diffusion is how any gases, especially, move around from one place to another in our body. So if I started to answer this question, I might say something like, so remember, the question is how is diffusion important to animals and plants? Okay. So animals breathe in oxygen for respiration. I might say that to start with. Um, and the oxygen that you breathe in diffuses from your lungs into your blood. So when you breathe in oxygen, it goes from one place to another, and that place is initially to your blood, but it moves. And how does it move? By this thing called diffusion, which is when whether if there's in one place, if there's lots of something, it moves to where there's not a lot of it. So it moves from one place to another. That's what diffusion is, from where there's lots of it to where there's not a lot of it. The oxygen diffuses from your lungs into your blood to be carried around the body. That's one use of diffusion. That's how one thing moves from one place around your body. Also, it is also when you eat food, diffusion is how the food moves from your small intestine into your blood as well. So food diffuses from the small intestine into the blood. Again, these topics are things that you will do in the coming um, months. So that's another use of diffusion. Then, when we do respiration in our cells, we make this thing called carbon dioxide that we have to get rid of. That's why you are breathing out carbon dioxide right now. And that carbon dioxide also has to move around your body from one place to another before you breathe it out. And it does so by diffusion. So carbon dioxide diffuses from one place to another. I'll name the places. Diffuses from your lungs, sorry, from your blood to your lungs to be breathed out. Okay, by the way, just so everybody knows, this everything I'm doing right now is being recorded, and in the next sort of half an hour, 40 minutes after I finish, it automatically ends up on our YouTube page. Um, so you can get that. And I sent the link to the YouTube in the email, so ask your parents. I'm not sure. It all ends up there. Um, so if you miss something, for example, you can catch up on it. That's the idea. Right. If you were answering this question, and it said refer to animals and plants, then you're not answering the question fully, or you can't get all the marks unless you talk about plants. So let's just talk a little bit about plants to make sure we get that done as well. Plants do something called photosynthesis. So I'm going to just put one line here that say carbon dioxide diffuses. Again, we're trying to explain why diffusion is important. Diffuses into the leaves of plants to be used for a process called photosynthesis. Again, you will talk about that in a later lesson. But what we're trying to show you here is that it links together quite a lot. Um, yeah, sorry, hopefully I've answered that very last question, which is that this is recorded anyway. So, I mean, you can just go back and watch it and pause it. So, you know, um, that's lovely. It's nice and easy for you. Remember, I appreciate it feels like I'm giving you the answers to the homework, but you still have to write it up. So you will be benefiting from writing that up. And again, I'm trying to just encourage people like yourselves to ask for help when you are stuck rather than leave it. So you have this option to come on. Nobody knows the questions that you're asking me. Nobody can see the other questions. So apart from when I say them out loud. So question 1B, somebody had asked, but they haven't answered what, yeah, I'm gonna have to work this out myself, aren't I, unless you tell me. Just if you ask her a question number, just say what year you're in so that I know which booklet to find. So who the person who asked the question 1B, just tell me what that is. Someone asked me what is a ribosome. Um, now, yeah, no, I'm question 1B, right? Let me do that first. Right, you shouldn't look. The other thing with these sessions is that um, if the questions, if I know for a fact that the answer to one of the questions you are asking me is in your notes that you were given in the lesson, then I won't answer it because I want you to read through the notes and learn from there at least. Sometimes, however, there'll be a lot of questions that you can't do from the notes alone. So this is where you can come and ask them. But I can almost guarantee that the answer to what is a ribosome is in your notes because I taught this lesson several times last week. Um, One part two, and you're right. Yeah, I'll do that. Question 1B, year nine first. Let me just do that first, which is here somewhere. Yeah, this is a hard question. So it's hard because the scale is all wrong. So I'll tell you what you're supposed to do for this question. Um, it says calculate the magnification. Now, when you calculate magnification, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take the so a magnification is like how far you've zoomed into something when you're looking down your camera or down your microscope. So what you have to do is find the size of the image that you're looking at. The image is what you're looking at down the microscope that's been like, you know, scaled up like really big because it's been, you're looking down the microscope. You have to then divide that by the real size of the object that you're looking at. Now, in the question, it tells you to that this represents 0.1 millimeters in real life. So that's the real size. Okay. That's not actually how long this line is, if that makes sense, because it's much bigger than that. So what you're supposed to do is measure this line with a ruler and get it in, you'll get it in centimeters to start with, but you'll need to convert it to millimeters. So I know that this is supposed to be about 4 centimeters long. Let me just make sure that makes sense. Yes, it's meant to be 4 centimeters long. I appreciate that the printing might change that slightly, but it's meant to be 4 centimeters long, which is 40 millimeters. Now, that's the image size. That's how much we've zoomed in, 40 millimeters. The actual size was 0.1 millimeters. I appreciate this is not the best explanation, but it's quite a complicated topic. Um, but you're meant to take the real length of this line and divide it by what they're saying the scale is. So you do 40 millimeters divided by 0.1 and you get 400. That's the answer to the question. It's the magnification of that question. Again, that's a tough question though. If that's the one that you're struggling with, then that's okay. Um, right, there's a couple of the year eight booklets that have been asked, so I'll just do that. I don't know, there'll be a bit of repetition in this, I'm confident. Um, right, okay. Um, so question one, part two in this one. Um, which is explain one way in which the structure of the leaf mesophyll cell helps it to carry out its job. Let me just see if I've got something open that will help you understand this. I don't. Okay, just give me 1 second. Um, essentially, I'm trying to show you a picture of the cell that the question is about. Right. This is the sideways view of a leaf. Okay. Um, there's all these different cells. You don't need to know all these yet, but you will eventually, so don't worry. But I'm just trying to show you what the question is about. Um, I'll answer both of these questions first. What is the main job of a leaf mesophyll cell? So leaf mesophyll cell is it's here, the mesophyll, which is over. There's two types of them. It's near the top of the leaf. Now, the main job of this thing is, if you notice this picture here, there's loads of these green dots. Now, you should hopefully know from your lesson that those green dots are chloroplasts. That's what chloroplasts look like inside a plant cell. Now, this one, or these cells, have got loads of these chloroplasts. So when the question asks you what is the main job of the leaf mesophyll cell, it's the one that has lots of chloroplasts, which means what do chloroplasts do? They absorb light for photosynthesis. So that's actually the main job of the cell. And then it says, explain one way in which the structure helps it carry out its job. What is special about it? You need to explain that it has got lots of chloroplasts, which absorb the light. That's the whole point of it. Having lots of them, as this picture shows you, this one has more chloroplast than anything else in this leaf. So the lots of chloroplasts allow it to do that. Okay, right. See if anybody has a question. Question six, somebody's asked me from the same one. So let's go for that. Oh, it's the same ones. Right. So the photograph shows part of the surface of a plant root. This part of the root is covered with hundreds of structures. So let me get my artistic skills out. Um, if this is a plant, okay, right, and these are the roots of the plant. On the roots, there are loads and loads of tiny little things. They're hairs, literally. And they're called root hairs, imaginatively named. And that's what this picture is of. Okay, so the root is covered with hundreds of these little structures. They're called root hairs. That's the first bit of that. The next question says, use the scale to measure the length Y to Z on the photograph. So you need to say how long Y to Z is. That looks like 85 millimeters to me. Just check that is what it is. Yes. So from here to here on this ruler is 85 millimeters. That's the answer to that question. And then it says the root is magnified 100 times. Calculate the actual length. Well, what we're saying is that we've made this picture 100 times bigger than real life because we've zoomed in so far. These things are really small. We've made this picture as big as you can see it on your screen. But we've made it 100 times bigger than what it actually is. What it actually is 100 times smaller than this number. Because when we've made the picture, we've made it 100 times bigger. So in reality, in real life, it is 100 times smaller. What's 100 times smaller than that number, 85 millimeters? To make a number 100 times smaller, you would divide it by 100. Timesing makes it bigger, dividing makes it smaller in principle. And so 85 divided by 100 is 0.85. That's what you were supposed to do for that question. 6B year nine. Just one thing on this, which I'm letting go for today for now, but you will know that when you join this Zoom meeting, you have an option to enter your name or to choose, I believe, like anonymous, which means that I don't know who it is. Um, Going forward, you have to show your name. Okay, so there is somebody asking me lots of questions whose name I don't know, and that won't work going forward, just so you know. So I won't answer questions unless I know your name from the thing. So just so you know, going forward, the person who asks question 6B year 9, if I don't know who you are, I'm not going to answer your questions. Structure X is very small. If I finish this off, there are thousands of these things. How does this help the plant? Right. The job of these things, if we go back to this picture here, if this is a plant and it's the job of these root hairs and the roots is to absorb water from the soil. So imagine this as water. Now, this water can be absorbed by that hair, this hair, this hair, this hair, this hair, this hair, and all the millions of hairs that there are, they can all be absorbing water and minerals from the soil. So by having so many of them, and having thousands of very small ones, it means that we can absorb lots and lots of water and minerals from the soil. So we need to say that it helps the plant because it can absorb more water from the soil. In fact, I want to say one more thing. By having all of these structures, what you want to say is that it gives the root a large surface area. Okay. Um, so I'm going to write a proper answer. Give the roots a large surface area, and so they can absorb more water. Okay. And there you go. Right. Question 6B and 9, question 6B and 9. Oh, yeah, there you go. Sorry, I knew it was. Okay. Question 6B and 9. That's answered now, isn't it? Yeah. Question 6B. Oh, no, that's year 8. Sorry. Year 8. 6B and 9. Um, remember, with all these sessions, by the way, you don't, I mean, obviously, you're welcome to stay as long as you want. But if, for example, I've answered your question and you have no interest, further interest, then no one's stopping you, just so you know, from going. 6B, this one. Okay, so this question, I'm in the right place, is about diffusion. Um, oops. Okay, question's about diffusion. And it shows 4 different ways in which molecules may move into and out of a cell. The dots show the concentration of the molecule. In fact, it might not be about diffusion. Um, so the question is, this cell is respiring aerobically. That's a difficult question. Right. If a cell is respiring aerobically, right, if this is my cell, um, let's try and close this. If this is a cell and it's doing this thing called aerobic respiration. Again, you'll learn more about this later if you don't know it very well right now, but that involves this cell taking in oxygen. It's just like your lungs, basically. So it takes in oxygen and it gets rid of carbon dioxide. That's what a cell does if it's doing this thing called aerobic respiration. It takes in oxygen, lets out carbon dioxide. So if we need to figure out the movement of oxygen molecules, well, for a start, if that is your cell, oxygen must be moving into the cell. So that immediately takes you to either A or C as your answer. So oxygen always goes in, right, to the cell. So it's either A or C, the arrow pointing in. But which one is it? This is a question about diffusion. Diffusion is when particles move from where there's lots of them to where there's not a lot of them. So it's from the high to low, not low to high. Okay, that's not the way it goes when you're breathing. So that's why the answer is A for the first one. And then the carbon dioxide moves out, so it's one of B or D. And carbon dioxide also goes from where there's a lot of it to where there's not a lot of it. So high concentration here to low concentration there, which puts the answer as being B. Um, and the process is called diffusion. Okay, well, that's hopefully straightforward. I'm checking if I've answered, if I've missed anybody. Um, Somebody asked me the year seven question, but I didn't clarify. You just said you're not sure on the question, but I meant to figure out if it's a plant cell or an animal cell. I don't know what that means. Um, okay, fine. Right. Assuming there's no more questions specifically, what I'm going to do is just quickly show you a little recap of those important things that I would say that you need to try and remember from what you did at the weekend, like the important bit of what I think you should definitely remember. So, for a start, these five things that you can see on this picture on the right-hand side are the things that you find in an animal cell, the five different things. Now, for all of those five things, at the very least, for you guys, for your age at this moment in time, what you want to make sure is know the names of these five things that you find in an animal cell, but also um, what each of them does. So, for example, make sure you've got a sentence in your mind for what each of those five things does. Like ribosomes, that's where proteins are made. Mitochondria is where respiration takes place. Cell membrane controls what goes in and out. Nucleus contains genetic material. Cytoplasm is where the chemical reactions happen. So this is a bit more of a detailed explanation, but that's what it is. Also, I should just mention, only I'm seeing some names on the thing, but just so you know, with this session, you're welcome to stay for all effectively. I do about 2 hours, or I'll do it till about 9 p.m. Or a bit earlier. But you can stay for all of it if you want. But in principle, the idea is that year 7, 8, 9 for the first hour up until 8 o'clock, and then 9, 10, and 11 for the second bit. But if you feel like it, if you're in year 11 and you just feel like just listening to my voice for 2 hours, you are more than welcome to. Um, right. That's animal cells. And then what you should also make sure you know, again, the very least that I would recommend that you should try to know is that the plant cells contain all of those five things that I just talked about, plus three more. The three more being the cell wall, the vacuole, and the chloroplast that I talked about earlier. And again, for each of those three things, at the very least, try to make sure you know what they do. So you can say a cell wall supports and strengthens the cell, just like a sentence. That's all you need, a sentence for it. A vacuole contains cell sap. That's enough. Chloroplasts are where photosynthesis occurs. For them, you probably need to know a little bit more. For example, they absorb the sunlight for photosynthesis. But this is what I'm saying. Just at the very least, just make sure that you know these basic fundamental things from the lesson that you did. I won't talk about bacterial cells or microscopes. And then the only other thing that I just want to mention is that thing of diffusion that we've just talked about a few times, which is diffusion is where, if you look at this picture, as you might have seen this picture on the weekend, um, is where particles move from where there's a lot of them to where there's not a lot of them. They kind of spread out. That's what diffusion is. Question 8A and B, yeah, 9. Okay, I will get to that in a second. Good timing. I can tell in this situation you're obviously just trying to do it right now and asking me the questions, which is okay. Um, this is what diffusion is, and the particles move from where there's a lot of them to where there's not a lot of them. Although I don't like this picture that much, the best way to understand this, somebody is always keep pressing the raise hand button. I assume that's just because you're pressing the button. But if you have a question, you can type it in the box. Um, the better way to understand or to remember diffusion is that it happens across that cell membrane that you see in the cell as the outside thing. It means that things can go in, things can go out of the cell. And again, things move in and out of cells from where there's a lot of them, high concentration, to where there's not a lot of them, low concentration. Okay, so high to low concentration is what diffusion is. And the other thing, just lastly, before I just answer the remaining couple of questions, is that it can only happen if the stuff that is moving is small enough, which is why this picture is so wonderful, because it shows that these things here are too big. Even though there's more of them on this side, they won't just move across the cell membrane because they're too big. They can't fit through this little gap. So they would have to be made, if they were going to get across, they'd have to be made smaller. What is the name of that process where we make things smaller or food smaller, it is called digestion. And again, in the next couple of months, you will do a lesson on digestion and the fact that we break down these things. And one of the reasons we need to break them down is so they can then move around our body from one place to another. Otherwise, they'd be too big to get through the cell membrane. So again, it's important that the reason why this is taught in this order is so that you can then later link this stuff to the later stuff you're learning. These are not all just topics by themselves. They're all like a big story, and this is just the beginning of it. And you will gradually learn all of the other stuff. Right. Lastly, I'm going to answer the remaining two questions that somebody has asked, which are 8A and B on the Year 9 booklet. Right. I'm not answering question part 8A. If the answer to 8A is not in your notes, then I want you to show me your notes. Okay, because it's very, very unlikely that the answer to that question is not in your notes somewhere. Okay, 8B, the image below shows part of a plant root. That's those root hairs again that we've talked about a couple of times. The plant root is adapted for absorbing water from the soil. Use information from the diagram to explain how this root is adapted for absorbing water. I probably shouldn't answer this question because the answer to this question is exactly the same as the answer to one of the earlier questions that I did a little while ago, something with the root hairs and what they do, but I will answer it. So the point is, roots, by having all of these hairs, it gives them a larger surface area. That phrase you need to say a lot. Okay. So the question is, how is it adapted? So you can see in the picture, there's lots of these hairs. So say that. There are lots of hairs. Okay, that will get you a mark. Then you can also then mention that what does that do? That gives the root a large surface area. And then lastly, what does that large surface area allow the roots to do more? It allows them to absorb more water from the soil. Or in fact, a better answer is it means there can be more diffusion of minerals into the plant. Because diffusion happens faster if there's lots of places for things to go in from. And that's what those hairs do. Okay, so yes, once again, when you ask these questions, just make sure that the answer's not in your notes. Shay, question two, part C, which is that the year seven booklet that you are in year seven, aren't you? Just to clarify that. I'll have to check otherwise. Um, I'm gonna check. So once again, when you ask a question, just say what year you're in so that I know that. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Um, so question only because all of it, whilst you all did the same topic, your homework booklets are slightly different. And therefore I have to. So two part C. This. Question two, part C. Yeah, fair enough. That's a fair enough question to be stuck on at this stage because in the lesson you probably didn't write down the word equation for photosynthesis in that lesson, but you will in the lesson on photosynthesis when you do it. But I'll tell you the answer. Photosynthesis is basically how plants make their own food. That food being this stuff here, it's called glucose. It's just a type of sugar. That is essentially the plant's food. The way they make their food is by taking carbon dioxide from the air and water from the soil. They combine those two things. They combine it and they make this food for themselves. And they also make something else that they let off, which is very helpful for us. And that is oxygen. And that is the equation for um, photosynthesis, which you will cover in a later one. Right. On the basis that nobody has any further. Um, which question are you talking? Oh, that one. Sorry, yeah. Well, when you ask me this is really important. Okay, important exam technique thing. You have just asked me a question. The question that a person has just asked me is, what is this thing here? Now, when I saw the word, I have no idea what that means. I have no idea what it is, right? But the reason you're asking me that question is because it's mentioned in this question. All that proves to me, the fact that you're asking me that question, is that you have not read the question. because it tells you in the first line what that stuff is. You will come across words in questions that you do where you read it and you think, I have no idea what that is. But that's okay. Because usually, if there is something that you're not expected to know about, they will tell you what you need to know about it. What you need to know about it is told to you at the beginning of this question. This shows an organism called euglena, however you pronounce it. It is made of only one cell. It lives in ponds and streams. They have features of both plants and animals. That's all you need to know about this thing. It's told you everything you need to know about it. So make sure you read the question, is my advice with regards to that. And then there's various features, and then you have to answer the question based on what you have just good. But good. I'm glad you asked that so I can show you that often the information that you want is in there if you read it. How can you tell this is an animal cell and not a plant cell? You might say something like, it's got a tail, and it doesn't have a cell wall. Remember, plant cells have a cell wall, so that makes me think it's a animal cell. Um, how can you tell it can carry out photosynthesis? Where does photosynthesis happen? It happens in those things called the chloroplasts. And it has got chloroplasts, they're labeled. This is what I mean. So you didn't need to know what that thing was because it tells you everything that you need about it. Okay, right. It's 7:50. I am going to, given that there's no more questions at this point, just so you know, this session will always be from about 7:15 till about now-ish. Okay. I'll go longer if people have more questions. It's fine. It's every week it's happening, so you can ask. The other thing I should add to everybody here, there's quite a lot of people here, is that you, in the email that I sent, if you ask your parents to read it, that I sent earlier today, in which there was this link, there was also a telephone number in it, a WhatsApp number. I know a lot of you have got this because you message us all the time. But those of you that haven't, there is a number, a WhatsApp number that you can use to contact us and communicate with us if you need something. It's not specifically for loads of homework questions. That's what this is for. But just so you know, it's there in case you need to contact us in an emergency or something. Right. I am going to stop there until 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, I will return and do what I'm doing with the year 10 and year 11 students. So the online this session that I'm doing will always be on a Wednesday from about 7:15 onwards. Okay, 7:15 till about 8 till about now for you guys in year 7, 8, 9, from about 8 o'clock till whenever for the students in year 10 and year 11. This one will always be on a Wednesday evening. I've blocked out this time to always be here all year. But there's another online session that you have if you want it. Again, this is also if you want it. No one's forcing anybody to be here. There's another online session which will be either on a Monday or a Tuesday, which is specifically for English. Okay, because we're not covering English in the lessons that you come to. We're just going to do it every week with this online English thing. So again, it's a similar format where the first part of it from about 7 till 8 will be sort of more easier, basic English like punctuation, grammar, spellings, story writing, the stuff that you might need to do in Key Stage 3. And then the second part of it will be the more GCSE stuff. Um, you can always leave, just to be clear. I'm never going to tell you to stay and go. Um, 10C, yeah, right, last one then. Okay, 10C, yeah, right. This is why it's important to try this homework before you arrive here, because I can tell you're obviously trying it as we speak. Um, I don't understand question 10C. Um, I mean, you really should. So the chloroplasts produce oxygen. The oxygen produced passes out of the cell by diffusion is how gases move from one cell to another place. That's what diffusion is. Okay, right. That's it for that one then. So I will return at 8 o'clock. You're welcome if you want to stay. You can do. If you want to go, you can do. I'm never going to keep a track of who's here and who's not, just to be clear. So I will return at 8 o'clock and do whatever any GCSE people want. Bye. In answer to the question about the eye and the brain and the whole other hormones, the answer is in the next lesson that we do biology. I need to, tomorrow I'm working on just getting a little timetable printed out for everybody so that you know what we're doing in each lesson for the rest of the year, which we already have. We just haven't made it look nice for you to take home. Um, but the answer to your question is in the next biology lesson it's called plant and animal hormones, where we do all the menstrual cycle, which is the reproductive hormone and stuff, and also the brain and the eye. And that, although the brain and the eye are not, well, the brain is not a big topic, the eye is. Um, and so we will do that in the next one. Right, it's 8 o'clock. So, firstly, everybody in year 10 and year 11, we did cells for year 10, and we did some of, I say homeostasis is a huge topic, so some of homeostasis in the uh, lesson that you did at the weekend. First of all, um, are there any questions from here? Ah, there we go. Hello, see you again. 1367, and last question from the year 11. Yes, let's do it. Okay. Um, right. Again, I will make sure I look at these questions and decide whether or not it's worthwhile. And I don't think I need to answer. I'm gonna, I'm going to do it. But just to be clear, going forward, make sure you've read all of your notes to check if you can answer these questions. For example, I suspect that the answer to this question 1A at least is definitely in your notes. A person with type 1 diabetes cannot make enough insulin. Just so you can be clear, if you are in year 10 at the moment, I'm just doing this in the order that people are asking me. But this is still a topic that you will need to know. So if you didn't have any homework questions on your cells topic at the weekend, then you'll still need to know this stuff. So if you want to just listen in, it is useful. But if you do have any cells questions, then go for it. Um, a person with type 1 diabetes, which organ makes insulin? The answer is the pancreas. The pancreas is the organ that's constantly monitoring your blood glucose level, and it will release insulin every time you have a meal in order to get your blood glucose level down, unless you are a diabetic, in which case it won't do that. Um, a person with type 1 diabetes can control the concentration of glucose in the blood by injecting insulin. Yes, they can. Um, and complete sentences. Insulin acts on an organ called okay, so when insulin is released into your blood, it doesn't immediately do anything. It doesn't actually directly do anything. What it does is it makes another organ, your liver, do something. And that's what that one is. It makes your liver do something. And what that liver does is it takes in the extra sugar that's in your blood, the extra glucose that it doesn't, that shouldn't be in your blood, um, and changes it into something called glycogen. Glycogen is the name we give to an insoluble store of glucose. So it is converted to this thing called glycogen, and then it's kept until you might need it later. 1367. Right, 1C. Insulin cannot be taken as a tablet. This is because it's a type of protein. What would happen to the insulin in the tablet if it reached the stomach? Well, what does the stomach do to protein? Because it tells you it's a type of protein. What does the stomach do to protein? It digests it, it breaks it down. And so that's what your answer is. It would get broken down. Um, Broken down or digested would be fine. You can even say what it's broken down into. What are proteins broken down into? They're broken down into amino acids. The person who raised your hand, again, you don't need to raise a hand. You can just type in the keyword question and answer. There is a question and answer section of Zoom where you can type into the box. So I'm not observing people who raise their hands. Um, right, this next question. Two people. Each drank some glucose. Person A has type 1 diabetes, person B does not have diabetes. So if you have diabetes, right, and you have some sugar, then what will happen? In fact, no, let's do this the other way around. For hopefully you and I, assuming we are not diabetic, when you have some sugar, it increases your blood glucose level, but then quite quickly it comes back down again because your pancreas releases insulin to make that basically come back down again. But if you are a diabetic, your pancreas doesn't release insulin if you're type 1 diabetic, which means that your blood glucose level goes up and 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 keeps going up because there's nothing to bring it down. It then naturally comes down, but it comes down very slowly, as you can see. Do you see what I mean? It's not coming down like that. It's coming down very slowly like that because you're a type 1 diabetic. Also, the difference between having diabetes and not having diabetes, look where this starts. You start off with a much lower glucose level than you do if you are a diabetic. There's a few key differences between these two lines, which I think is the question. Um, yeah, later on. How much higher was the highest concentration of glucose in the blood of person A than the highest of person B? The highest of person A is here. The highest of person B is there. So you've got to read across the scale carefully and get that. That looks like 14.2 to me, and that looks like 6.8. So it's the difference between 14.2 and 6.8, which you can use a calculator for, which is 7.4. And that would be the answer. Okay. 3B about the pancreas. We didn't learn about it on the Friday 5 to 7 class. That's fine. It's fine. Look, there'll be times when the other thing that I need to do for all of you guys, which is I'm just doing in the next day or so, is make sure that all of you have access to these videos that we did. There will be times when in a 2 hour lesson we might not get through every single bit of the topic, but you actually have access to all of the content that you need. I just need to make sure I need to give it to you, so you will be able to get these. So don't worry. There are times when some of the questions in the homework might not, perfectly be answered in every single lesson. Um, if you're at 6.7, is that okay? As the answer to that question? Um, no, it's too far away from the answer. Oh, 6.7 on the graph. Yes, that's fine. Sorry. Because then you'll still get an answer that's close to 7.4 or 7.3. So according to the mark scheme I'm looking at, if you put 7.2 or 7.3 or 7.4, you still get all of the marks. Um, I'll get to the question that you had about 3B in a second. Describe one other way that the results for person A were different from the results of person B. So you can say, so apart from the fact that it got to a much higher level, you can say that it person A's glucose fell more slowly, right? That is a slow fall. That is a really fast fall. So you can say person A's glucose fell more slowly than person B's. That would be another way that they're different. Is that okay? Not gonna write it down. Um, and then I'm not read that. I'm just going to answer the question. What type of relationship is shown in figure 2? Anytime you have this kind of direction on a graph, it's called a negative correlation. Anytime it's that direction, it's called a positive correlation. So that would be a negative one in that. Right. And then a person is at risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is where, that thing that we said about the liver and what it does? It takes the glucose out of the blood when it's too high, when there's insulin. In type 2 diabetes, it basically stops doing that. It becomes what we call resistant to insulin. It essentially happens over the course of your life if you keep on having too much sugar. Your body essentially stops listening to insulin. And so your liver doesn't do what it's supposed to do um, in response to it. Now, if you are at risk of developing type 2 by diabetes, there are a couple of things that you should do. You should definitely do more exercise because what exercise does is from respiration, it helps to use up glucose naturally because if you are doing respiration, you're using glucose. If you're doing more exercise, you need more energy. You've got to do more respiration. You're therefore using more glucose naturally. Therefore, you're less likely to have a high blood glucose level and have problems with it. That's the first thing. The second thing is also just to have less sugar in your diet. If you have a problem with sugar, then you should have less of it. I think that's essentially all you need. Um, does breaking down the urea? Yeah, it does. So urea is a product of when you have too many proteins in your body. And so part of the process of turning proteins or getting rid of excess protein involves a process called deamination, and it happens in the liver and it produces urea. Yes, there is a full explanation for that, which I will, well, not full, that is the explanation, but I can, a better wordy explanation in a moment I can do. Right, let me see what else there was here. One, three, six, and seven. And then somebody else asked me about six, didn't they? No, three. So one, three, six, seven. Okay, one, three, six, and seven. Three. Um, So, what happens in the body to keep the body temperature constant? Big six mark question. Right. In order to answer this kind of question, body temperature constant question, you need to think about what happens in your body when you're feeling too hot and what happens when you're feeling too cold. And think of them as two separate answers, because then when you join it together, it's a big answer. If that makes sense, right? So, when you're too hot, you can mention that you sweat. Okay. I'm going to add a bit more detail here. So, when you sweat, you cool down when the water evaporates from your head. So you've got all this water sweat on your head, and it gets hot because it's taking your body heat, and then it evaporates. So it takes that heat away. Um, you cool down when sweat evaporates. That's why that is something that happens to cool you down when you are uh, too hot. The other thing that happens when you're too hot is something called vasodilation. Vasodilation is essentially why people look red when they're hot. It's because the blood that's getting warm now, because let's say you're outside on a hot day, the blood starts to get warm, and so it flows closer to your skin to try and lose heat through your skin. And that flowing closer to your skin is what makes you look red. So vasodilation, the way you put that into words is by saying that the blood flows closer to the surface of the skin. Okay, that's the sort of redness that you experience. The other thing that can happen when you're too hot is you've got hairs on your body, and they can be made to stand up or made to lie flat. Now, when they stand up, what they can do is they can basically make you warmer because it acts as an extra layer of heat. And so when you're too hot, you want to do the opposite of that. The hairs need to lie flat so they don't trap any heat because you're already feeling too hot. You don't want that. There are other things there's loads of things you can say for this question. Um, okay, that's stuff that can happen when you're too hot. There's a couple of other things that I should have mentioned, really, which is before all of this, any of this, we have these things called temperature receptors in our body. They are monitoring our temperature. Um, and they will constantly monitor it and detect what your body temperature is. And if they detect that it's too hot, then a lot of this stuff can happen. Okay. Um, if they detect that it's too cold, then essentially the opposite of most of those things happens. So we don't sweat, obviously. That would be cooling us down even more if we're cold, so that doesn't happen. The opposite of this thing, vasodilation, is called vasoconstriction. This is when blood flows away from the surface of the skin. So it kind of keeps the heat in a bit more, so you don't lose as much heat. You can mention that the opposite of hairs lying flat is the hairs stand up. If the hairs stand up, they act like an extra layer of insulation. Um, and so that's great to keep you warm. And the other major thing that, of course, happens when you're too cold is that you shiver. Shivering is when your muscles contract to release heat energy. Essentially, they're trying to get you to move because you're too cold. Just as a reminder, if you have just joined, I don't know how many people are on here anymore. Um, the idea of this session, this extra session that you all have access to, is you can ask questions on the homework that we give you at the weekend. If there's anything else you didn't understand, I'll try and get to it. Um, and you can come and go if you want to leave earlier, stay later. It all gets recorded and put on YouTube quite soon after the session. So if there's something I'm writing that I'm skipping over quite quickly, you can go back and watch it to your own entertainment. Um, right, there was more. There was one, three, six, and seven, was it? One, three, six, and seven. Okay, six. Um, right. These are always good questions to practice, I promise you, okay? Because there is no way that we could have fully prepared you for a question like this. The breaking down the, I thought I answered that question, the urea question, but I'll come to it again. But I had thought I answered it. So questions like this, it is impossible to prepare you for in the lesson that we teach because it's like it's a very specific situation asked in an exam question. So you have to deal with it, on the spot. But this is the kind of question I want to help you with because you can't have learned everything. So, human body temperature is controlled within very narrow limits. Make sure you read the questions. Scientists investigated the effect of drinking ice cold water on internal body temperature and the rate of sweating. So, just by reading this, as I'm reading along, I'm thinking, right? If I'm drinking ice cold water, what is it likely to do my internal body temperature? Decrease it, right? Make it colder. What's it likely to do to my rate of sweating? Surely I won't sweat as much if I'm drinking ice cold water because I'm cooling down, right? So that's what I'm just thinking. This is the method they used to investigate the effects. They sat a person inside a room that was at this temperature. They measured the person's body temperature near the brain. They measured the person's rate of sweating. They then, after 20 minutes, gave them an ice cold water to drink. And then they continued to measure their internal body temperature and sweating for a further 50 minutes. So they could see what would happen to it after they'd had the water. Give the reason why the person should not move during the investigation. Think of what I just said about shivering. What did shivering do to your body temperature? It increased it. If we are investigating only the effect of drinking the ice cold water on your body temperature, we don't want to do anything else that would affect your body temperature. So if you're drinking ice cold water and sort of jogging on the spot at the same time, then it's going to mess up your results because you're going to start getting warmer because you're jogging and maybe cooling down because of the water. So it's going to not isolate the effect of just having the water. So the reason you shouldn't move is because any movement would release more heat or it would increase your body temperature. And you don't want anything else to change your temperature apart from um, the drink. Just to be clear, there's only the questions that have been asked so far are only the people in year 11 that have asked me any of these questions so far. So if there are any, it is meant to be for both years. So don't be afraid to ask if you have any question on the cell biology booklet that you had. And these are the results. Look what happened. They drank, this was their body temperature at the beginning, 37.4, as you'd expect. They drank the cold water here, and then what happened to their body temperature? Went down for the next 10 minutes. But then it went up again and was back to normal again. Again, if I'm just thinking based on my knowledge as to what's going on here, the ice cold drink made you colder, but then your body has to do something to bring it back up again. That's when you start doing things like shivering, perhaps, to make yourself warmer, or that vasoconstriction thing, or the hair standing up. The thing they starts to do stuff to try and get you back to normal. It's called negative feedback. It's got a negative feedback, which is a low temperature, and now it's going to bring it back up again to normal. That's what it's going to do. And then the rate of sweating did the same thing, basically. You were sweating this much, which is a low amount, but then because you had the drink, you were sweating less because you're now colder. But then it went back up again because again it needs to sort of bring it back to normal again afterwards. What is this person's normal body temperature? That's just where we started, which was 37.4 over here. Just one more thing again. I don't know whether this is a Zoom problem or an individual problem, but if you are asking a question without having your name visible, so anonymous attendees, then I probably won't answer your question. The results show that when the ice cold water was drunk, the temperature near the brain decreased. Explain why the temperature near the brain decreased. That's a harder question, but when you drink the water, where do you drink it from? So you drink the water near near your mouth, right? And where does it go first? It goes to your stomach. So what would initially have quite a hard question to answer here? You'd need to say that the blood near your mouth and stomach is cooled down first. And then where does that blood then flow? It flows all around your body. So the blood would then flow to the brain, which would decrease the temperature of the brain. Do you see what I mean? That's how the temperature near the brain, it wouldn't directly decrease because you're not drinking water from your brain. You're drinking water from your mouth and then into your stomach. But then that blood is still going to flow around, so it will overall decrease your body temperature. Um, so the blood flows to your brain. Okay, that would be that. The thermoregulatory center in the brain responds to the decrease in temperature. How does it send information to sweat glands in the skin? So this is technically, if you started with us in year 11, this is a bit of a disadvantage. But at the end of year 10, and towards like April, May, we did a topic on the nervous system in homeostasis because it's such a big topic. We did some of it then, we're doing some of it now, and some of it next time. And one of the things that we learned about is that we have these nerve cells in our body that send electrical signals quickly when in response to changes in your body. And that's essentially the answer to this question. So you can mention nerves or nerve cells, or you can say electrical signals, or you can say the nervous system, something to do with nerves, which are how information is quickly sent around your body. The rate of sweating changes between 24 and 36 minutes. Explain how this change helps to maintain the person's normal body temperature. 24 to 36 is there, right? So once you've had the cold drink, you sweated less for a while. Why does that help maintain your normal body temperature? Well, firstly, you need to say the obvious, which is during that period, there was less sweating happening. Don't forget when you're answering these questions, say the obvious thing. So there's less sweating happening on the graph. And what does sweating do? It helps you to lose heat, right? To cool you down. But because you've had a cold drink, you don't want to cool down anymore. So by less sweating, you're going to lose less heat. Okay? Which means you won't get as cold as a result of this ice cold drink. Okay. And then during exercise, the skin appears red. What causes the skin to appear red? It is blood vessels moving closer to in fact, no, sorry, that's wrong. It sees the dilation of blood vessels in the skin. It's called vasodilation. It's not the blood vessels moving closer, it's the blood moving closer. Um, Dilation of blood vessels means they actually just open up to move towards the blood near the skin. It's like someone directing traffic, right? The blood vessels direct it to the blood towards the skin by dilating, essentially. Um, okay, right. Is that all the questions? Anybody else? Um, 1, 3, 6, and 7. Okay. Ugh. Okay. Homeostasis controls the internal condition of the body. Explain how blood glucose levels are controlled in the body of someone who does not have diabetes. Again, I will do this, but I do think that I'd be very, very surprised if the answer to this question was not essentially fully explained to you in the notes that you have, but I will go through it. Someone just asked me, is this a lesson? I don't know what you mean by that. Question 5B, cell biology. I'm just trying to make sure I know who's asking the question. I'll answer it, but just tell me if it's a different one. 'Cause I know that one of my groups got a different booklet. If you were doing the foundation level one, I gave you a different booklet. So I will answer that question in just a moment. 7B and 5B. Yes, I will come to that. I don't know about is this a lesson. Yes, you have this to attend every week if you want to. Question 7. Explain how blood glucose levels are controlled in the body of someone who does not have diabetes. If you don't have diabetes, if you don't have it, right? Then, firstly, also just be careful. It says controlled. Really importantly, read these questions carefully. Controlled means essentially tell me what might happen if your blood sugar level gets too high and tell me what happens if it might get too low. Don't forget the too low bit, right? because you can just forget that the point is controlled means either way, right? Either direction. So how are blood glucose level controlled? So if too high, if your blood glucose level is too high, you must mention that a hormone called insulin is released by the pancreas. And what that does is it causes glucose to move into the cells. You can say the liver is what takes it in. It's up to you. Glucose moves into the cells um, and stored as glycogen if you want. You can say the extra stuff, but I'm just telling you. So the and you need to say if too low as well. If too low, then it's not insulin, it's a different hormone. The hormone is called glucagon, is released. It's a really annoying name, but it is what it is. Glue is released, and what does that do? It causes the opposite of that to happen. It causes glycogen that you had stored before is converted to glucose and put back into the blood or released into the blood. Okay. Um, right. Two types of diabetes. There is type 1. Type 1 is where your pancreas stops producing insulin. Whereas, and it also says how it can be treated. So the treatment for type 1 is to take insulin injections and then avoid sugar. I mean, avoid a high sugar diet. I'm just going to simplify that answer. And exercise. Whereas in type 2 diabetes, it's not quite the same problem. It's not that the pancreas stops producing insulin, it's that um, your your cells stop responding to insulin. And so they don't then do what they're supposed to do, which is remove the glucose from the blood. And the what's it called? The treatment for this, you can't take insulin injections because insulin is the problem. It's not working basically. So the only thing you can do is avoid high sugar foods and exercise in response to type 2 diabetes. Right. I am not going to answer that question. And yeah, I don't know. I think I've done the two major things. That's just reading a graph, so that's fine. Right. Does the insulin cause the glucose to move into cells or convert to glycogen or both? Um, both is the answer to that question. So the insulin causes the glucose to move into the cells, but when the glucose is in the cells, it is converted to glycogen. So both is the answer to your question. Glucose moves into the cells and is converted to glycogen. That's what you want to say. Yeah. Okay, right. Cells. Let me do a bit of this. There's two questions people have asked me, and then I'll answer the last thing that you've asked, which is about the dialysis machine. Right. Yeah, question 5B, please. Cell biology. Let's have a look what that was. This one. Tell me if that's not the 5B that you're after, by the way. Cell biology. Yep, I'll do the cell biology ones now. Yep. But if you had a different booklet, then just tell me because I know which one it is. I just don't know. I can't remember everybody's names. Right. Question 5B. I did answer this earlier because it was in one of the other booklets, but I'll just quickly tell you anyway. When it comes to cells, all of your cells need to take in oxygen. The reason they need that is for something called respiration. Okay. So when the question says the movement of oxygen molecules for this cell that is doing respiration, any oxygen should be moving into the cell, which means that it's got to be either A or C in answer to this question. Just type something said. Anonymous attendee, 3B about the pancreas. I'm not answering your question unless I know who you are. So movement of oxygen molecules, it has to be A or C, and the way gases move around your body is by diffusion. So that means from a high to a low concentration. So what you need to do is look at where there's more of it and it's moving to where there's less of it. So that would be the answer to the first part of the question. Movement of carbon dioxide molecules. Carbon dioxide has to leave the cell because it's one of the waste products of respiration. They get rid of it. And again, it moves from a high to a low. So this is going to be carbon dioxide, either B or D, because it's going out of the cell. But it's going to be B because of the fact that it's from high to low. Um, this one is the higher booklet. So did you want the other one? I'm just checking. I presume you did. That's why you're asking me the question. Um, so if you had the other one, then I'll just check. I think this is the one I gave you. So 3B, right. Just checking. Okay, fine. Fine. Um, so that was question 5B on that one. Well, if that's not the one, then please tell me. Right, somebody asked me something else. Let me just go back to the questions. 5B done, and then you asked me for 3B from the pancreas. I'll come back to that because I'm on this one first. Um, 7B here, 10 booklet. Sorry, I had to go back and find everything. 7B here, 10 booklet. This one, again, I did answer this earlier, so if you actually watch back a video, then you'll find it. But I'll tell you quickly. This is a root of a plant. It has lots of root hairs on it. Um, and that's the first thing to say. Explain how this plant is adapted for absorbing water. By having lots of root hairs, it gives this plant a large surface area, or this root, sorry, a large surface area, which means there would be more diffusion of water and minerals. That's it. So lots of root hairs, large surface area, more water and minerals. Um, right, and then somebody, one last one for this one, just because, in general, I'd recommend asking them as early as possible. So the cell biology, question 15, is this the extra stuff that we added at the end? Um, we did add a couple of weird extra questions at the end. That's not, yeah, this one. Okay. Um, just to give you a variety of exam boards, we've added these in this year. Um, so question 15. Which organelle is needed to produce large amounts of protein? So again, if you have learned what the parts of a cell do, you will know that ribosomes are where proteins are made, which answers that question because it's the ribosomes. Okay. Um, sorry, I'm in the wrong one. Just making sure that I've got the correct answers. Yes, so it's ribosomes, right? Where large amounts of protein has to be the ribosome. A small lymphocyte has a diameter of 10 micrometers. Magnifies this 400 times. Calculate the diameter of the image of the lymphocyte seen using this microscope. Okay, there is a formula, right, which is for magnification. Magnification equals image size divided by real or actual size. So they're saying that the actual size is 10 micrometers, or the real size, and the magnification is 400. So 400 equals image size divided by the real size, which is 10. And so all you do is you do 10 times 400, and you'll get 4,000 micrometers as the answer. How many micrometers are in 1 millimeter? The answer is 1,000. This is just a conversion that you will need to learn. Okay, there's 1,000 micrometers in a millimeter. Um, part 2 and 3 parts, and then you put Q3 at the end of that. Does that mean you want me to do question 3 as well? Um, this one? I don't know. I don't know if you need that. Um, but anyway, I'll just quickly just do it in my head. Which cell appears to have adaptation to increased diffusion? Any cell that has a large surface area, which means like a longer cell membrane of some sort, is adapted for diffusion. So that would be that one. Um, one useful substance produced by the pancreas. That would be slightly harder for you to do at this point, but insulin, you could say any of the enzymes like amylase, protease, lipase, they're all produced by the pancreas. Um, explain how Celsius is adapted to producing the substance. So, um, explain how Celsius is adapted to producing the substance. So, um, explain how Celsius is adapted to producing the substance. So, um, explain how Celsius is adapted to producing the substance. So, um, explain how Celsius is adapted to producing the substance. So, um, explain how Celsius is adapted to producing the substance. So, um, the substances produced by the pancreas are proteins. So and where are proteins made? Ribosomes. So any cell that has lots of ribosomes is good for producing these substances. Is there any cell here that has lots of ribosomes? Well, given that the ribosomes are the dots, is any of them really? But I suspect the most is in C, isn't it? It looks like, so I'll go with that. Um, and that's it. Right. Somebody asked me something else at the end. 16 A, B, C from here alone. I'll decide when I look at it. Um, there's a bit of a weird numbering thing at the end of this, which is going to slightly confuse me. 16, that's right here. Let me decide if I want to do it. So 16, the first three parts. Describe the trends. Nope, not doing that because you should be able to read a table and say what you see. In principle, look what's happening here. What's happening to these numbers and what's happening to these numbers, which is not easy to answer, but that's what you need to do. Okay. Explain why blood glucose concentrations remain high for 4 hours to 8 hours. Essentially, this question is explain what type 2 diabetes is. Why would your glucose level stay high if you were type 2 diabetic? It's because your cells have become resistant to insulin. They're no longer removing the glucose from the blood and storing it. And so that's why your glucose level is going to stay high. Um, and then patients of exercise, explain how data shows that the exercise occurred after 8 hours but before 12 hours. If you exercise, it reduces your blood glucose level. So there must be something showing in that data that's showing your blood glucose level going down between 8 hours and before 12 hours. There must be something, there must be a decrease. And that can be explained by the exercise that you are doing. Right, question 6 as well. Somebody's asked me. I presume that's a cell biology booklet. Again, just each time you ask, just specify it's a cell biology because there's lots going on. Question 6. I mean, I shouldn't need to do this, but I will do it. This is labeling an animal cell. An arrow that's pointing to essentially nothing in a cell is cytoplasm. The arrow pointing to the outside is the cell membrane, and then the big thing in the middle is the nucleus. Okay, so that is question 6. Anonymous attendee again. I'll answer the question. Question 3A, is it B because it has a larger surface area? What are the long term? That's what I mean. So go back to that. So these tendrils, as you have described them, which is a good word, are essentially what they do is they look, this cell could have just been like this. It wouldn't have really changed it wouldn't have changed the inside of the cell if it had just been like that. But what happens as a result of these extra things, um, it increases the surface area. And that's it. It's because it has a larger surface area. It's essentially more of the cell membrane, okay? And yeah, that's it. There's a larger surface area. It's bigger on the outside as a result of that sort of shape. You will often see cells that do that kind of thing, where the cell membrane, it could have just been a circle, but no, it's like that, right? And what you've done is essentially made the cell membrane longer, increased the surface area, which means that more things can get inside it at once. Um, if you right, the I'm not sure if that last question is a serious question, so I'm going to avoid it for now. But if it is, feel free to ask it again. Um, right, the last thing I will do um, is question 4, cells. Right. In future, I'm going to be quite strict about this, is that what you guys need to do is attempt the homework prior to attending this, and then show up knowing which questions you're going to ask me. Because at the moment, clearly what is happening is that you are attempting the questions live and then asking me as you go. I'm not answering question 4, A, because you should know that based on the lesson, and so should you know for part B based on the lesson. And you should know for part C based on the lesson. So I'm not answering that question. I think that's lazy to ask that question. If you read your notes, you will have the answers to those questions. Right, okay. The last thing I'm going to do is very specific to homeostasis. I'm just going to talk about one thing which somebody has specifically asked me because you might not have got round to it in the lesson, and this is a slight problem sometimes when there's a lot to get through, which is something to do with the kidneys. Um, right, so I'll do it via this. 23 part 4. Okay, let me just see what it is first. Um, is that right at the end? This stuff here. 23. Is this one here? Is that what you're after? Um, um, no. Oh, God, I just fell. Some of that, are you not going to do the year 10 again? I mean, what do you want me to do? Is that do you have questions from it? Again, I'm not going to answer any more questions from this booklet because, again, I want you to get used to doing it before the time and then asking the question as you go. Yeah, not doing that. So the last question I will do on this is this. Look at the bacterial cell. The human eye can see only 0.1 millimeter size. Minimum amount we need for I can see the cell. Okay, we need to figure out. Look, this cell is this size, and we can see things that are that size. Okay, if I said to you that your eye can see things that are 8 meters big, I'm just exaggerating the point, right? You can see things as long as they're 8 meters big. And there is something in the distance that is 1 meter big. Now, you won't be able to see it because your eyes only see things that are 8 meters big. If I now said to you, how much bigger do we need to make this thing so that you can see it? You would hopefully say we need to make it 8 times bigger because 1 times 8 is 8. Or essentially, 8 divided by 1 tells you how much bigger you need to make it. And so, in exactly the same way, if I can only see things that are this big, but I'm looking at something that's this big, I need to make this thing bigger by however many times bigger zero point 0.1 is than 0.00008. So get your calculator and do 0.1 divided by 0.0008, and that will tell you how many times bigger you need to make that thing. Okay? The questions on none of the pages are optional. You should attempt every question that you can do. And you should, again, ask for help if you are stuck on it, as people have just done. That is the point of this. So you should try to attempt every question. And yes, in the answer to the question, use help from the internet. Yes, I'm okay with that because firstly, I can't stop you doing it. And secondly, as long as you are benefiting from what you do, if you are researching something and learning something yourself and then answering the question correctly, that is a useful, helpful thing to do. As long as you aren't just, what's the word? Blindly doing it, where you're just like writing something down without it going into your head, then yes, I'm perfectly happy with you using help. The same as effectively what you're doing now, asking me for help is the same thing, really, isn't it? Right. That's it. I'm done for the homework booklet. I just want to answer the one thing that somebody had asked me about. The something to do with kidney dialysis machines. Right. So, firstly, there was another question that you asked, which was to do with the liver, which the answer to that question is here, by the way, which is that if you eat a lot of protein, your body can't actually store protein. It's not the same as sugar, it can store it. So if you have too much protein, which are broken down into amino acids, they are converted into fat and carbohydrates, which can be stored. But when you convert those things, which happens in the liver, a waste product called, well, firstly, a waste product called ammonia is produced, which is converted to urea. So yes, all of this is happening in the liver, just so you know. Um, in answer to that first question, at least. Okay, 1 second. Right, so then let me move on to this kidney dialysis machine. So the only way to explain kidney dialysis machines properly is to fully understand what the kidneys do first. So what the kidneys do is, I'll try and do an illustration of this, but I don't think I'll have a very good one. But imagine this is your blood flowing, right? And you have had um, quite a lot of water that day, and you've had loads of salt, which is an iron, quite a lot of stuff in your blood. Okay. Now, that can mean, just like when we talked about sugar, that your sugar level can get too high. In the same way, the water level in your body can get too high, or the iron content, ION, iron, because you eat it is in the foods that we eat, can get too high. What your kidney's job is to essentially fix that if it's too high or too low, essentially, a bit like, the whole sugar stuff that we just did. But the way that happens is a little bit different. Okay. So what happens is, if I just try and exaggerate this blood for a moment, and let's put the kidneys here. I don't know what kidneys look like. Let's put them there. Um, make them really big. And also, just to be clear, this particular topic that I'm talking about, if you are doing combined science, then you wouldn't need to know this. This is a very specific to triple science. The kidneys, what they do is they remove all of these things from the blood first. It's a bit weird. The way it's done is weird. It's like, okay, we'll take everything out of your blood first. That's called filtration. It filters everything out of your blood. And then what it does is it decides what to put back into the blood to get it back to the right level. So then some of this water and some of these ions essentially get put back into the blood until it's at the right level. That's called reabsorption. So there's filtration and there's reabsorption. So as a simplified explanation, that's what the kidneys are doing. They're kind of filtering these things out of the blood and then putting back what the blood needs to keep, essentially. Um, Focusing on water and ions here. Okay. Um, that's what it does. Now, when the kidneys don't work, like you have kidney failure, then it means that what I just showed you with a terrible diagram doesn't happen. Um, and therefore, the water and iron content in your blood ends up getting really high or really low, as in the point is it's not in control. It's like a diabetic and sugar. It's just not in control. Um, and so they can undergo something called a kidney dialysis. Now, that is a little bit complicated to understand. I will do my best to do it quickly. Um, and this is the situation. So when you have kidney failure, your problem is that your blood effectively isn't being cleaned. It's not being adjusted for the right level of water and the right level of ions and so on. And so you have to go and sit on this machine for like several hours to get it fixed. And what happens on that machine is this. So you all of your blood is removed from your body. Okay, so it's actually taken out. This is blood flowing from from the person, and what it's going to do is it's going to go around in this machine and then come back inside you. That's what's going to happen. Okay, and therefore, just thinking of negatives of this, there is risks of infection and so on, right? Because your blood is kind of going out into the open and then sort of coming back, right? It's very easy to pick something up on the way. So there are risks associated with that, but we're talking about the good stuff. So let's pretend that your blood had too many of this iron, whatever it might be, right? This stuff that's in here, too much of it, okay, in your blood because the kidneys aren't working to fix it. What happens here? This is the clever bit. The blood goes through a substance that has a partially permeable membrane, which means that things can go in and out of it. And it's surrounded by something called dialysis fluid. Now, dialysis fluid is fluid that contains the right amount of, I'm just focusing on one thing at the moment, right amount of ions. Okay, just the right amount. So not too high, not too low, just the perfect amount. Okay. And this is where the clever bit happens because you know what diffusion is. Diffusion is the movement of particles from a high to a low concentration. So if the concentration of these ions is too high in your blood, then it's going to be lower, or it's going to be higher than the concentration in this dialysis fluid, because the dialysis fluid is like the right amount. And so in this situation that you can see in this made up picture that I've just done, there is a higher concentration of this stuff in the blood than there is outside in that fluid. And because it's got a partially permeable membrane that allows stuff in and out, diffusion will mean that this moves from a high to a low concentration, effectively reducing the amount of ions in the blood. Do you see what I mean? It'll bring it back down to the right level. And if the opposite were true, if there were too few ions in here, let's just say again, because it's not in control, then what would happen? Now there'd be a higher concentration of the ions outside in that dialysis fluid here, because it's the right amount. It's not too high, it's not too low. And diffusion works from high to low. So these would move in to here, bringing it back to the right level. And that's the clever bit about this. It uses diffusion perfectly, I suppose, because it kind of says, well, if it's too high, then stuff will move out and it'll leave. It'll go from high to low. If it's too low, then stuff will come in. It'll come from high to low in. So it kind of fixes the problem. And so there's a bit more to read on this, but that is in principle what is how it works. Um, So let me just read this last bit and then we'll be done. But yeah, the partially permeable membrane allows smaller molecules like ions and waste sub. I didn't mention waste, but I should really mention waste. The other thing that your body produces that you asked actually was urea, right? Urea is one of the things that the kidneys fully take out and get rid of when you go to the toilet. Um, if there is loads of urea in your blood, let's make it fitting and make it green. Um, right, then the dialysis fluid will not have any urea in it, zero, okay? Which means that there will always be a higher concentration of it inside this blood that comes out than there will be outside in that fluid. So this will always move in that direction. And you want it to move in that direction because you want to get rid of the urea that's in the blood so that when it goes back into your body, it's the right level, okay? Um, so going back to this page, lastly, so many things open. Um, the dialysis fluid has the same concentration of dissolved ions as healthy blood. That's the crucial thing, that it's a healthy amount. That means that you'll only get rid of the waste and anything that is in excess, basically. So if there's too many ions, they'll go out. If there's and the urea will go out. Anything that needs to stay in will stay in with this dialysis process. And that's the clever bit. It uses diffusion in that particular way. Let me see how many people are still here. Okay. Right. I think that's it for today. So next week, just in case you care, the people in year 10 will be doing something called atomic structure and the periodic table. And the people in year 11 will be doing some more organic chemistry. Even though you've done it before, we should do it more than once because it's hard. Um, and so you'll be doing some of that. And then same again next Wednesday if you wish to join. And also, lastly, I just want to mention in the email that I sent earlier today, there was a WhatsApp telephone number which you can use to message us about work-related things, like if you're running late for a lesson or if you have a question or something. It's a quicker way to communicate than that. This thing that I am doing right now is currently actually being streamed live on YouTube. Um, but that's not for you guys to watch there because I don't answer any questions from it. It's just for you, the questions that you can ask directly on the Zoom link. But automatically, that means that as soon as I finish this, which I will do in the next 20 seconds, um, it will become a video on our YouTube page. Step to Success UK, one word. If you want to find it, you should be able to find me on it occasionally. But it'll be on there. So the whole thing will be on there. The last roughly 2 hours that I've done, and this will happen every single week. And it will also happen with the English sessions that you will get on Mondays or Tuesdays, whichever one it is. I don't know which one it is yet, but they all end up there, which means that you can watch in your own time and do what you like with it. I think that is enough. I will see you if I will teach.